Hello and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. We're continuing Marvel Nemesis stuff, still, for some reason. And this time we're doing Storm for Marvel Nemesis. The worst design of them all. Okay, as you can see, I've done the base sketch already, as I have with all the other ones. And yeah, to be honest, this could be very quick or very long, because there's not much clothing that I have to draw here. Not as much as I had to draw with other characters, but yeah, no, this is embarrassing. This design, I mean, like all the other designs, yeah, it's embarrassing, but I mean, this one in particular is really bad. Like, I mean, they were real lazy on this. It's just terrible. Ugh. Anyways, let me start this nonsense. See, the handy thing I guess with Storm is that I don't have to put a huge amount of effort into drawing her eyes because her eyes are just white, so not much real detailing going on there. But yeah, good god. This just... Again, I've said my piece about all the other designs, but just good god, this one is... It's the worst one. Of a group of just god-awful designs, this one is the worst, which is already telling you something. But I mean, if you're familiar in any way with this design, you'll know that it's lazy. It's just lazy. That's the only way I can describe it, really. Because it's a case of where, yeah, they're just leaving nothing to the imagination. And I mean, yeah, their goals behind this one were a little blunt. But yeah, I mean, again, I mentioned this in the Electra one. There's nothing wrong with doing a design that is provocative in a sense, but I mean, if it's just there for the sake of it, then what's the point? I mean, this is the thing, they probably put it in Marvel Nemesis because Marvel Nemesis is an edgy game, so it was like, oh, we're doing some of this Mortal Kombat stuff already, so I may as well take some of the worst elements of Mortal Kombat, the older ones at least, and bring them with us into the fray with Marvel Nemesis. And yeah, it's just, yeah, as I say, it's embarrassing. Yeah, I'm not quite, I mean, again, the only way that this type of thing gets past for quite as far, or gets as far as it does, is if everybody is in agreement that this is the best thing that they can do. Which, I mean, I don't know really if that's like I don't know who's at fault there other than everybody, of where it's a case of where no one stopped them and said, maybe this is a little much. Nobody came in and said, maybe this is too much. Like, I mean, at least Elektra's wearing trousers. You know, I have to say, I never quite understood what this headband thing that Storm wears was supposed to be, because it just looks kind of strange. Because it only really became a thing, I think, in the early 2000s, because like I never saw it before. Right? Well, no, it was a thing otherwise. It was a thing elsewhere as well. It would have been around in the 80s too, I think. I think it was actually around since her first design, but it's still, I don't really know what it is. I don't know if it's got some kind of purpose or what have you. But Yeah, I always thought it was like an odd piece of design because she doesn't have it in the 90s show, or just in that the 90s white design, which I'm a fan of, not this, naturally. But yeah, I never quite understood what the actual purpose or what it actually is. This little headband. This is the thing I know I've touched on before when it comes to hair. I know I touched on in this little mini-series as well, the Marvel Nemesis ones. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it with Wolverine, but it's to do with line weight when you're drawing hair. Or hell, it even kind of applies on other stuff as well. You want to apply a different type of line weight depending on how dark certain colors are supposed to be. So for example, if you're drawing lighter colored hair, you're going to want the lines to be lighter too. You're not going to want your lines to be very heavy on as I say, lighter colored hair. So since Storm's hair is white, you're going to want to try and keep things a little lighter like this, so where these lines are a little bit thinner and a little bit more scattered, so that you're getting more space in between the lines, so it looks lighter. More of a visual trick than anything else, to be honest. Now, for whatever reason in this game, Storm is kind of like proportionally weird looking, and not in just the obvious ways, but she's just kind of like weird and long. Like all of her limbs look kind of like weird and gangly, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Seems like a bit of an odd choice, to be honest. And I mean, I get the impression that maybe Storm didn't have quite as much time in the kitchen as... Well, that was an unintentional sexist potential thing there. But I get the impression that Storm, just in every respect, didn't get as much time as the other characters, because it's a case of where, like, her character model in game looks kind of weird, just from, like, as I say, like, proportionally looks kind of weird, but it's a case of where the like all of her poses and everything, like in the character art and everything, they're just kind of her stood there. They all look very kind of proof of concept-y, so I don't know what the story was there. If it really was just kind of, yeah, as I say, proof of concept type stuff, of where they were like, oh, this is kind of what we're thinking, but then they were like, oh, we gotta ship the game tomorrow. That's in, it's in the game. And yeah, that's it. It's like that Key and Peele skit about Gremlins 2. It's in the movie. Now that I have had my momentary freedom from the nightmare and getting the hair done, it's time to move on to the rest of this garbage. Really is terrible. It's real bad. But yeah, like, so it's weird. So with the different versions of Marvel Nemesis, there are slight differences in terms of, I've even mentioned before, there's the art is different, different artists who did the different versions of the game, and also certain design elements are slightly different. So for example, I think I might have actually mentioned this before, but I'll just reiterate anyways. But yeah, so with the the PSP version, it's a case of where it is a lot more colorful, just in general. It's yeah, more colorful, and the art is a little bit more cartoony. But some characters have different designs in it. So for example, Wolverine has his classic design. He's not just in a t-shirt and jeans. Now, with stuff like this, they had the opportunity to fix certain elements, such as Storm's design. They had the opportunity to fix this, but they did not. They did not fix Storm's design in the same way they fixed Wolverine's. And so Storm is very much still naked, basically, in the PSP version, which is odd because again certain other characters got a bit of a fix, but Storm I guess was not so lucky. But yeah, this again I feel like perhaps maybe Storm was like one of the last characters they were adding in or something. So maybe they just didn't have the time to fix it, if they even intended to. Which is unlikely. Which is most certainly unlikely. I feel like I don't have that much to say about this, really. I don't think there's much to be said about it, quite frankly. It's yeah, it's fairly just kind of blunt. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a design that that is, as I say, maybe a bit more provocative or a bit more overtly sexual. But the least you can do is try and at least give it a purpose. Because, for example, I don't see why a character like Storm, for example, is just going around basically naked. It doesn't really make any sense for a character. But yeah, like I mean, I don't really see the point of it other than, well, you gotta get some boobs in the game. I mean, that is the purpose, obviously. I mean, based on basically all the design of the female characters in the game, that is more or less the design philosophy behind them. Is can't have any of them look like superheroes. Gotta get some boobs in the game. That's about it. Yeah. They needed to quite literally get some skin in the game. That's a bad joke. But it did make me laugh. It is. Oh god, that is just show. You know, I rarely draw characters who are so sparsely clothed, but to, I suppose, try and find some learning experience within this, it's a kind of it can be a bit of a tricky thing when you're, say, even drawing somebody who has no sleeves or something like this, something as simple as that, maybe not quite so extreme as this, but whenever you're drawing something like that, it's a case of where you need to be careful that you're not adding like too much and too many lines to the skin or stuff like that, because it'll make them look kind of like wrinkly. It'll make their like just their arms and stuff look wrinkly, which that you shouldn't be kind of making the arms too wrinkly, because that'll just often look strange if you're not careful. So you just need to be very kind of, I suppose, economical about where you're placing your little folds and stuff like this, and not to go too overboard with them, and yeah, just to kind of keep it to about, yeah, to a minimum, I would say, and just only really put in the little lines that are absolutely necessary. Like, I mean, here I just put in this little line just to show the shape of the shoulder, put in here to keep the arm or the elbow, and then the little fold in between, because the skin would fold there. And then may as well put this in to kind of show the pit area a little bit, or hell, I could even maybe make that line a little thinner. Because again, and again this is going back to line weight, on skin you wouldn't be seeing like very heavy lines. You would usually be seeing reasonably thin lines for the most part, because I'm developing this habit now of using the eraser by accident. But yeah, it's a case of where you need to be kind of judicious in a sense. I'm using all these big words. You need to be like kind of careful, I suppose, about the lines that you're adding and stuff like this. You don't want it to kind of look over detailed, because again, this is something which you can very easily struggle with, is the kind of feeling that you're not putting in enough detail, but you've put in plenty already. You don't need to kind of go too overboard, because it'll just end up making things look worse if there's too many lines going on. And again, the worst thing you can do is kind of confuse somebody's eyes by throwing in too many lines. This is the thing, it's a case where you want to have a distinction between the number of lines that are on, say, clothing and the number of lines that are on skin. So you wouldn't be putting quite as many lines on the skin, so that the clothing looks much more distinct in comparison to it. The fingers are a little bit thick. Not going to change it now, but I'll use this opportunity to talk a little bit about something which I have talked about in the past, and it is that you're oftentimes whenever you're drawing stuff, you're working off of tendencies. So for example, generally speaking, women tend to have men and women tend to have like different types of hands, in that generally speaking men tend to have shorter, thicker fingers but a bigger palm, whereas women would have a smaller palm but longer, thinner fingers, usually. It's more so based on body type than necessarily gender, but yeah, it's a case of where, so usually speaking, you would probably be having women with thinner fingers, but here I don't know what happened. It might have been the model this was based off, maybe just had thicker fingers or something, I don't remember. I don't have the reference image anymore, so I couldn't tell you. Okay, I think I'm remembering now what the reason for the thicker fingers is, and it's because I'm pretty sure I based this off of a more muscular woman, because I wanted to bulk Storm up a little bit because of the weird kind of gangly proportions that she has in the game. But yeah, I really have to show the belly button. But yeah, it's a case of where my brain is failing me once again. But yeah, I wanted to bulk her up a little bit because of her kind of odd proportions in the game, and so that's probably why the thicker fingers, because the woman in the reference probably would have had a larger body type that I then sized down a little bit for. Yeah, I'm almost certain that was what happened actually. I'm going to need to thin out some of these lines a little bit in a second here. Because yeah, she's maybe a little too toned here. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Don't know. Add a few little lines along the legs just to kind of show that there is a bit more kind of musculature going on there. My nose is whistling. Again, I feel like I don't have much to say about this because it is just kind of lazy. Lazy and obvious and just kind of just boring. boring. This stuff was everywhere in the early 2000s. And again, as I say, yeah, Mortal Kombat type stuff where it was just kind of like, yep, alright. Alright guys. This is what you got. This is what you got this time. No, that wouldn't be there. I was just trying to think if the top of the boot would be visible here, but I think the top of the boot would actually be here, because it's like a little bit above the knee, so it would not be visible. Again, I should say the line weight thing does. Oh, oops, I must have touched my mouse there while. Yeah, I did. While I was doing that line, made a little squiggle. But yeah, the line weight thing that I was mentioning earlier does kind of apply to everything. Because yeah, these boots are supposed to be black. They should be kind of. The lines should be a little bit thicker to kind of show that, and yeah, thicker, darker, and heavier, just to kind of more clearly illustrate that. It may not immediately come across otherwise. Right, so that's the details done. What am I gonna say? Right, so yeah, we've got the dots, but you know, again, I feel like I might be coming across as a bit of an old man here, but it's a case where you can do sex appeal without it seeming cheap, and that's kind of how this comes across. It comes across as cheap and kind of lazy, of where they wanted to do it, but they didn't want to put in the effort to try and make it in any way kind of tasteful. And yeah, I mean, again, Marvel Nemesis, not exactly known for being a tasteful game, or just having any taste whatsoever. So it's a case of where, yeah, I mean, it's not overly surprising that you'd get kind of lazy, wonky designs. And I mean, again, it's a case of where there's the two extremes really with Marvel Nemesis. There's normal clothes or there's blunt sex appeal. That's kind of the two types of design in the game, and I mean, naturally, basically all the male characters are just normal clothes, and then all the female characters are just blunt sex appeal. And yeah, they didn't try and put in any effort to try and make that work in any way or do anything. They're just like, fuck it. Don't normally swear on this show, but oh well. You know, with a lot of the design in Marvel Nemesis, I am often reminded of the Marvel swimsuit editions, and those were, yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, those were a series of covers with various characters, not just female characters, in swimsuits on the covers, which naturally had no bearing on the actual story inside, as far as I remember at least. And it's a case of where like there's some pretty funny stuff on those covers. Sometimes there's one of the Punisher. I think he's like sat by the pool, or he's in the pool or something, and he's completely naked, and he's just got like, I think, is he wearing, I can't remember exactly, but he's either got a skull censoring his crotch, or he's wearing like a G-string that is a skull. I don't exactly remember. I've not seen these in a long time, but I do seem to remember thinking that there was some good laughs to be had by looking at some of them. Like there was one of Wolverine in jorts. That was one of them, which was a funny one, because just the image of Wolverine in jorts is kind of funny to me. But yeah. I think there was one of Storm as well, but these were released in the 90s, and that was at the period of time of where Marvel were desperate for money, and they were selling off all their IPs and everything, and they're selling all the movie rights to basically anybody who would take them, and so that was kind of where that all started. But one of the things that they did during that period of time was the swimsuit editions. And actually, now that I think of it, I'm almost certain that those swimsuit editions are unlockable in Marvel Nemesis. So, yeah, I'm actually nearly 100% certain that they're unlockable in Marvel Nemesis. But, yeah, it's kind of hilarious. I'm pretty sure that probably inspired a lot of their design sense for Marvel Nemesis. But yeah, I mean, Marvel Nemesis was released in a time of where you wouldn't have had like Disney controlling Marvel or anything like this, so it was a case of where whenever a game or a film or any of these things would come out, it would be entirely up to the company making it what they wanted it to be. And so this was the thing. I imagine EA probably had quite a degree of creative control over Marvel Nemesis, hence why you would get a lot of kind of these odd choices just in general, choices which don't necessarily fit characters or choices that feel like they're for a different game or any of these types of things. Again, I feel like it's definitely, I don't mean to just blame everything on EA. It's easy to do that, which is why I tend to avoid doing it, because again, it's just kind of lazy. But yeah, I feel like there's probably some of it is definitely Marvel's fault, because I mean, as I understand it, Marvel are not an easy company to work with in terms of game development, and I don't think they ever were. Because you hear stories from like the development of games like Marvel vs. Capcom or any of these types of games, of where it was a struggle to try and get anything past. So I'm pretty sure Marvel have kind of always been tricky to work with in that regard. But this is the thing, they weren't in a position to negotiate back then, so it was a case of where the developers could kind of, they still had to choose their battles, but they could just kind of say, nah, I don't want to listen to you sometimes, and they'd be able to do that because they were the one with the power, really. They were the one with the money that Marvel needed. So it was a case of where yeah, they could just kind of get away with saying, nah, we just kind of want to do whatever. And yeah, this is the thing. It was a case of where back then, yeah, they could just kind of do whatever they wanted, but nowadays it's a case of where Marvel have much more sway, being the biggest, or being, yeah, the owners of the biggest film franchise in the world, or the creators of the biggest film franchise in the world now. It's a case of where they are allowed to or they're able to do a lot more bargaining and push certain things a lot more. Which is the reason why you see Captain Marvel in everything, even though she's not that popular. Like, I mean, by like fan vote and stuff like this on any of these polls, she's rarely up there. I mean, I imagine some people like her, but it's a case of where she's just not as popular as other characters, or as most of the other characters, really. Like, I mean, everyone still much prefers Spider-Man and characters like this, so. But this is the thing, Captain Marvel is, for whatever reason, the poster child now of Marvel. I couldn't really explain why. I don't fully understand it myself. Okay, that's dots done, and wow, that's all in just an hour. This may be a quick one, who knows? And now we're onto our colors, which, I mean, there's not really a whole pile of color diversity going on. There's only like 3 different colors here. There's a small handful of colours. Right. Now, this is something which is odd. Her skin color is inconsistent across the versions of the game. Depending on which version you're looking at, her skin is darker or lighter. And in the game, she's reasonably pale. I mean, everyone's pale in the game. I don't know whether that's like a weird saturation thing or what the deal with that is. Well, I'll see here what is most accurate. You know, I guess to say one more thing about the design itself. I feel like there's a thing which you should never really make anyone who sees the design think. You should never really make anybody think, well, why is the character wearing this? And I feel like that's kind of what I'm getting here. Is it's like, okay, well, why is Storm wearing this? This doesn't really make sense for the character. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing something which is a bit more overt, a bit more kind of overtly sex appeal, a bit more kind of revealing, stuff like this. Nothing really wrong with it. It's just a case of where you should never make people seeing it think, well, why is this here? This feels kind of out of place, or not even out of place, but it feels, I suppose, inappropriate to the character. Because it's a case of where yeah, like, I mean, you should strive to have all of the choices that you make in design be something that makes sense, and you should never compromise on the character or on the practicality of a design simply for I suppose in this instance simply for sex appeal, or simply in other cases for just for something that looks cool or interesting. But I suppose if it looks cool or interesting, then people won't mind too much. But in this instance, the kind of goal is obvious. So it just doesn't really do anything for anybody, I think. Well, I imagine it did something for the designers. But yeah, you shouldn't design something in such a way that it has no purpose. That it feels kind of just there for the sake of being there. But to change gears, I suppose, something which is handy about whenever a character has makeup, it's a case of where you can use that to kind of reinforce the color palette that you're going for. And it's a case of where you should never really waste the opportunity to kind of reinforce your color palette in people's minds. You should never really you should never really kind of brain is still failing me now. But yeah, you should never waste the opportunity to keep your color palette strong and all this stuff. Because it's a case of where people can see the color palette in every element of the design, they'll pretty quickly realize, okay, well, that's what that character's colors are. And I mean, this is just a thing with Storm designs in general, or with a lot of X-Men designs even, is that there isn't really a consistent color palette with a lot of it. And in the case of Storm, it's a case of where I would think, at least, that Storm's color should be kind of focusing on white. Because that's kind of like, you can never get rid of white from Storm's design, because her hair is white and her eyes are white and all these other things are white. So it's a case of where you should never, in a case with Storm, you should kind of focus on the white, because that's something that is just all over her design already, so you can't get rid of it. So you should focus in on it. And this is the thing when it comes to a lot of characters, is it's a case of where, well, they have certain elements which you can't get rid of, so you should focus in on them and incorporate them more so into the design so that it looks more interesting. And yeah, this is the thing. It's a case of where never waste those opportunities like with makeup or any of these things. I'll just very quickly grab the background and throw it on here. Oh, I apologize for my extended period of silence there, but it is rather tricky, I find, to color in white, or at least it can be, because it's much more obvious whenever you're going over the lines and stuff like this with white, and it can just really distract you and draw your eye. So it's something to be kind of careful with, I find. But yeah. It is something that, yeah, I do try my best to be careful with, at the very least. So red. Yeah, again, I never really see red as being a particular design element that I associate with Storm all that often. And so it just seems kind of weird to me that there is as much red as there is in Storm's design for Marvel Nemesis. And again, I suppose some of it I can understand from the perspective of, well, we need to have a green version of this character because every character has like the weird like evil version, and so naturally they're all green because everything is green in Marvel Nemesis, but that version is yeah, green. So I can understand to a degree of them saying, well, we need to have something which is kind of, which we can't really have any of these characters have too much green in them because then we have to do some more work to try and make them look different for their evil mode. And 90% of them are just green. So yeah, I think that's maybe part of the design behind it, but I couldn't really tell you. Again, there is a surprisingly small amount of information on Marvel Nemesis. The Wikipedia page is like what, like 5 paragraphs. It's very short. Now we're on to our black, which is our last color. Yeah, very small list of colors here. But a little trick that I've picked up on when it comes to trying to make blacks look darker is making them kind of blue, making them a bit more of an ebony kind of color, and the purple takes to it kind of in a inconsistent manner depending on the kind of darkness of your blue. Again, I should probably make this maybe a bit more grey than blue here. But I mean, if you ever see, yeah, it's maybe a little too blue. If you ever see a, brain is again failing me. But if you ever see like a character in like an older comic or something like this is a good example. But in older comics, you would often see, like Wolverine's hair, for example, would be blue. And so the reason for that is not because it took to their shading better or anything like that. I imagine the fact that you can shade over blue but not black is probably something that maybe influenced their choice, but it's a case of where with Wolverine's hair, the reason why it wasn't just black, even though it was supposed to be black, was I believe it was ink costs. I think it was something to do with the fact that black ink was more expensive than blue ink, so they would just use blue ink instead. I'm pretty sure that was the reason, if I remember correctly. Now, I might be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that one. Okay, that's our colors done. And again, I feel like, yeah, our black is very kind of, it's definitely very blue. And you know, I feel like maybe I should bring that over a little bit to be more black, naturally. we're going to be applying a bunch of different stuff to it. So, may as well make it a little bit more black at least. But yeah, right, so now we've got to do the shading, and we're nearly done to be honest, and only an hour and a half in. That's kind of surprising, but yeah, I feel like I've already kind of said a lot of the stuff I meant to say when it came to this design, because again, I don't really have much to talk about with it. It is pretty just direct, and again, I've kind of said my piece on this design, and yeah, about my gripes with it. So we need to be careful when it comes to our purple for the shading on this, because we want to make sure that our purple is distinguishable from our black. It's fine if the purple is lighter, because it'll still be more visible, because that's the thing we're really striving for here, is less so than it being dark. You don't necessarily need it to be dark. It's a case where you just need it to stand out so that you know that's supposed to be the shaded area. Okay, you need it to stand out enough to know that that is, yeah, as I say, supposed to be the shaded area, because if you're not careful, it can kind of look a bit weird. Okay, that's our darks. I feel like maybe the darks didn't pick up quite as well on that black. I feel like maybe, you know what, I feel like this has happened in the past before, where I have done something similar to this, and then whenever I went in and did the lights, it actually made it come out a little bit more, because you can see there's multiple tones going on. So, I don't know, we'll do our lights here, and then we'll see if that helps at all. You know, I'm having a similar problem here that I had with Electra, in that I can't really tell what material any of this is supposed to be, because it is shiny in everything, because everything is shiny in Marvel Nemesis, but I think this is supposed to be shiny, because it looks even kind of shiny it looks kind of shiny in all of the art. So I think it's supposed to be shiny. So right, I'll try and work with that. It seems like it's supposed to be shiny. I'll work under that assumption. Okay, right, that took a little longer than I would have liked, and it's because of the shine. That's why it took so long, because I had to make everything shiny. But it would have made my life easier if I had decided the stuff wasn't shiny, but you know what? We're all about accuracy here, so that's how I chose to spend my valuable time today. Ugh. Alright, we'll very quickly sign and then do the light line and our other stuff very quickly. See how quickly I can kind of run through this stuff, because we're nearly at the 2-hour mark. Okay, we've got our light line done, we've got everything else done. Now it's literally just the gradient maps, which in theory should be quick. So we gotta grab the ugly gradient map, see how that one looks over here. It's ugly. it's still ugly. I don't need that anymore. And then with the texture, it's pretty damn ugly. Okay, so now let's see what kind of a gradient map I can come up with on my own. Let's have a zoom in and have a look around here and see how it's worked. Oddly enough, the blue has made our black look darker. Oddly enough, it has not made it look more blue, as I was kind of half expecting it to. However, that's not a bad thing. I'm glad it didn't make it look more blue. But yeah, that's Storm done. I've kind of rushed through the last bit, but naturally, I mean, there's not much to say about the double gradient map thing. I just do it just so that we can kind of see, just have a look and see what would it look like if I used something more like the game, and then see if I can fix it per se. But yeah, what have we covered today? We talked a lot about the design, we talked a lot about my issues with this design, and we talked a little bit about how you can kind of, or the opportunities you have whenever you're using, whenever you have a character with a particular color palette, and elements of a character's design that you cannot remove no matter how much you might want to. But yeah, the elements that you should always kind of stick to, the colors that are always there. Talked a surprising amount about color actually. I went on a tangent about the Marvel swimsuit editions and how kind of embarrassing that was. But yeah, that was kind of the gist of it, regardless. But yeah, this has kind of gone a little over time, and again, that would be the shiny that caused that, because I did not anticipate having to do the shininess, because I didn't realize immediately that that was actually supposed to be shiny, and it wasn't just the game's terrible color grading and lighting engine that was making that happen. But anyways, if you liked the video, do what you'd normally do. Subscribe, all that stuff. Like and subscribe, as they say. But yeah, bye bye.